my god,
the U.S. literacy rate
everyone
is
is
the lowest it's been in years.
No one can read anymore.
If you keep seeing stuff about the literacy rate and are getting concerned, you're just like me and are in the right place. However, before we get into the actual studies and what they say on the literacy rates, we first need to define what literacy even is. Now, the definition does vary depending on the organization. However, the general gist of literacy is the ability to read and understand/comprehend the information that you are reading. It also involves being able to use that information to understand the world around you. And therefore, the literacy rate is the percent of people in a given population that are able to do those certain tasks or do them to a certain level. This rate is usually measured through tests given to participants that test your ability to read information, pick out information in large bodies of text, and apply the information that you read. The questions can be very similar to any English section on a standardized test, but they also might ask you to ignore unhelpful information or try to use the information you are given to perform certain tasks. So that leads us to, what data do we have on literacy rates? Now, there are actually only a few studies out there that we can use to base our information on literacy rates on, especially in the United States in older populations, but there's still a lot of information that we can gather from them. Before we look at the actual data, let's look at the studies. The first study is the International Assessment of Adult Competency. This measures literacy, numeracy, and most recently, problem solving. But it's conducted with adults ranging from 16 to 74. And in the US, we have data from 2014, 2017, and most recently 2023. The question's difficulty in the survey corresponds to a certain number of points, and then at the end, your total point score is tallied and you are placed into one of 5 levels. They go from below a 1 up to a 5. So is that 6 levels? I guess it would be 6 levels. And sometimes the results are discussed in the levels, sometimes they are discussed in the points, so that's why I'm referencing that they're basically the same thing, just different names. But the results from the latest study do show a drop in the distribution of these points, with only 44% of participants earning a level 3 or above, compared to 50% in 2014. Now, this is going to be the main study we talk about later in the video, but I still want to touch on a few more here. Another study we can look at is the UNESCO Institute for Statistics study on proportions of populations achieving at least a fixed level of proficiency in functioning literacy skills. And I apologize for reading that off my prompter. I'm not memorizing that. In 2014, this level was 59.7, and in 2017, it was 59.4. The study looks at the proportion of adults over 15 who exceed a certain level of literacy. This is done through cross-examination of different studies, including the one we just talked about, as well as a few other ones. Now, through the National Center of Education Statistics, which also does the first study we talked about, they have another survey, which is the National Assessment of Adult Literacy. And it has been completed in 1992 and 2003. But between the 2 years, there wasn't much change in the data, and since it was from a while ago, we're not really going to be focusing on this one. Now, on a functional level, the main studies that we have do show a declining literacy rate. End of video. I'm joking. There's a lot more to get into behind this. For starters, let's talk about what a declining literacy rate even actually means, by starting with what it doesn't mean. A few common misconceptions I've been seeing on social media are that low literacy rates means that people can't read anymore, which I'll start by saying that literacy does not equal reading. Literacy is like the level below reading. It's being able to read and comprehend the information. So while there can be a correlation, and obviously if less people can read, that means less people are able to have a higher literacy level, it does not mean that no one can read anymore. People still can read, which I know even when they say no one can read, that's an exaggeration. Another misconception I see is that the American literacy rate is a lot lower or has dropped lower than some of the other countries in the world. And this is also not the case. Whether you want to view this as a good or a bad thing, the literacy rates have actually been pretty much dropping in every single country that has done studies on the literacy rates in recent years. This is a global issue. This is across the board. This is not a solely American issue. Another misconception is that literacy rates only impact kids and that we mostly need to study this in like elementary or middle school aged children. And once again, literacy is a very multi-generational thing as well. And it is also dropping across generations. It is not only kids that are experiencing this decline. It is not only elder adults that are experiencing this decline. It is everyone in every age group has seen this shift downwards. And while there are probably more studies on literacy rates in younger children, I did mostly focus on the adult literacy rate studies in this video because I feel like that's kind of the more the data I've been seeing going around, the charts and graphs I've been seeing, have more to do with adult literacy. And I feel like it's important to highlight that this isn't only a we need to improve schooling issue, the kids need to be reading more, this is, those kids, like, no, it's like this is an everyone problem. Across the world, across age groups, across every single type of social situation, this is happening across the board. Now, the biggest misconception I see is that the low literacy rates means that people cannot read above a 6th grade level. And the main thing is, like I said at the beginning of the video, the levels in the literacy studies do not correspond to like reading levels or grade levels. It is just level of points. And the study that I do see going around talking about the grade reading level doesn't have the most reliable source behind it. Like, it's very hard to define what a grade reading level is, even though there are like certain standards in education. It's like how testing that and seeing that in adults especially, there aren't enough studies on that, at least that I found, that we can conclude anything on a national reading level scale. So this one I just think is unreliable study. If you know of one that says something differently, please let me know down below, because I would love to look into it more. But I personally could not find anything that credibly says this claim has any merit behind it. Now, with all that said, what does a low literacy rate actually mean?
So while editing this video, I realized I didn't really look at the hard numbers of the study here. So I want to get into that before we talk about the more broader social implications of what this all means. So these graphs look at the average number of literacy, which this isn't actually the one that I see go around the most, but we can see that the average literacy dropped significantly from 2017. In 2012-2014 there was like a slight drop into 2017, but in 2023 there was a pretty significant drop of 13 points. It's like more points means you scored higher on the assessment, so having lower points overall means more people are scoring lower. This is the graph that I see go around a lot. So this one here, this first bar here is for level 1 or below. The second one here is for level 2, and this third one here is for level 3 or above. So as we can see, level 1 and below grew a lot, which would contribute to this number being a lot lower. If people are scoring in level 1, they're getting the least amount of points possible, and that would drop the average. So the level 3 and above didn't actually change that much, right? It dropped by 4 points, but it's more concerning that the level 1 and below grew by almost 10 points. And once again, the middle, more people, it's the fact that people are dropping out of this category and going into the level 1 and below that is mostly concerning. We also see this happening with numeracy, and we don't have any on the problem solving yet, because this was the first year that they did it in 2023. So this graph kind of breaks it down more as opposed to the different bars. It says specifically the percent of people in each category. So below level 1 grew the most from 2017 to 2023. So that really contributes to the huge rise here. It was the fact that people are getting below a level 1. Level 1 grew by 1%. Level 2 actually dropped. Level 3 also dropped. Level 4 dropped, and level 5 stayed the same. Most people are falling into this below level 1 as opposed to, maybe dropping from like a 4 to a 3. It's more like the data is shifting towards these bottom numbers here. Even if people are dropping out of level 2, it's not that these numbers are growing over here, but that these numbers are growing. They are dropping, not rising, which we would want to see less level 2, but more level 3s, 4s, and 5s. Now, I will leave the website for this in the description if you want to explore more of how the study is run and the specific things that are measured and the questions asked and everything. But I also want to kind of go into the framework and the levels specifically a bit more, because this was just too large of a graphic for me to put specifically in the video. So I'm just going to pull out a few things so you can understand more when we say below a level 1, when we say they're dropping here, kind of what that means. So these below level 1s are still able to read and process information, but it's a bit harder to connect it to the real world. They're not really able to navigate any complex information or large bodies of text. It's very simple, explicit instructions. Whereas level 1, they can understand the meaning a bit more, move around a bit more. They can start to understand texts that have diagrams and illustrations as well. In level 2, they can start dealing with multi-page text and also navigating the text when there is distracting information. At level 3, they can perform more complex questions or instructions based on larger bodies of text and also interpret the information more. Texts often get a bit lengthy here and a bit more difficult to digest, and they can disregard irrelevant information. Then level 4 and 5 keeps, expanding on this. Larger bodies of text, more distracting information, more abstract details. I think that this one here kind of describes it well. At this level, adults are able to reason based on intrinsically complex questions that share only indirect matches with text context. So they don't need to answer very explicit questions about the text. They're able to kind of infer and gather pieces of information with a more complex understanding. Now, the reason that there's a smaller percentage of people in level 5 is because it's kind of ambiguous what this means. They still think that there should be more ways for people to grow above a level 4, so that's why there is this level. But they say that adults here may be able to even assess the question itself and kind of understand the question that might be asked based on the text. But that is an overview of the level ranges and the data in this study. Now let's get back to the video. On a factual level, a lower literacy rate means that less people in a given population are able to read, comprehend, and understand the things they are reading and the world around them. Specifically, if we look at the levels in the first study and the fact that more people are falling into level 1, that means people are unable to move to the higher levels and they don't have the understanding, comprehension, or time attention skills to advance. Which means that they can't understand large bodies of text, target information in multiple pages of text, or perform more in-depth critical thinking on what they have read. Now, you may also hear this term literacy and think it only relates to higher education or large volumes of text, which only a small percentage of the population would really need to understand or even have the ability to comprehend. But literacy impacts so much more than that. In fact, it's present in almost every aspect of our lives. Reading and understanding are everywhere, from contacting and connecting with loved ones, to being able to understand the news and how the news impacts you specifically, to being able to operate and read maps and navigate your way around the world. And then also things like being able to understand contracts and medical prescriptions. Being able to discern what is false or misinformation, and also navigating around difficult topics without getting lost in the smaller details. The concerning thing isn't just that the literacy rates are dropping, it is what that means for broader society. Because while low literacy rates lead to less understanding, a high literacy rate can lead to better economic situation, more political involvement, and more financial and medical freedom. Higher literacy rates have also been linked to changes in the brain structure and better cognitive function. So just across these board, these higher literacy rates are something that we should try and strive for, to be able to equip citizens with better understanding of the world around them, which then leads to those better situations and life outcomes. However, since literacy rates can impact a wide range of things in life, it also means that a lot of things in life can impact the literacy rate. Things from poverty to your parents' education to technology, making it so that more people don't have to use these skills on a day-to-day basis. And because there are so many factors that can impact this literacy rate, it means this isn't a one and done issue. There isn't a simple fix to this. We can't just read more. We can't just change the education system or offer more resources to adults, which means that on a non-individual level, the biggest thing you can do, and I mean this so seriously, is to vote wisely. And I say this because a lot of the factors that can contribute to the literacy rate are in some way, shape, or form controlled by our government. From things like shutting down public transportation so people don't have the means to get to school or get to any offered resources, to cutting government funding so that the limited studies that we do have on literacy rates that can help us better understand it and what we need to do to help fix it and improve society, those studies not getting funding means we lack the understanding of how to move forward. If these studies weren't conducted in the first place, we wouldn't even know if this was a concern or not. This whole conversation is backed by 2 studies. And we need more to be able to fully understand this issue. And these studies often get their funding and their resources from the government or government-backed agencies.
It comes from improving the quality of life in other areas, so people aren't stressed about, surviving and putting food on the table, and have the time and the means to then do more leisurely stuff like looking into their literacy and trying to improve it, and having the time and the resources and the non-stressful load of life to be able to fix those things and to be able to help themselves more. Improving the literacy rate also comes from a government who isn't trying to ban books and limit education and remove parts of history. I'm also not going to get into the whole role that technology plays in the lower literacy rates, because I think that is way outside of my scope of understanding, and I do not think that we know enough about it to directly link the two in ways that wouldn't just be me theorizing and complaining about our the current impacts that technology has on us as a society. But I'll say for sure that having a government that
I was filming a rant here about AI and its effects on cognitive decline and making people actually feel lonelier, and my mic cut out during it. It's the only part of the video that's happened. Just know, there still is not enough studies on the impacts of generative AI on our brains. There's a lot of studies on it for the environment and the negative impacts globally. But I'm just saying, it's not good to have a government that wants to ban any laws against the progress of AI.
Obviously, there are non-government controlled things that lead to literacy as well, but I want to place such an emphasis on this because if we do not have these baseline things, or this baseline empathy from our government, it makes it a lot harder to focus on the other aspects of what we can do, even on an individual level, to help improve the literacy rate. But that leads me to an even smaller scale, which is you. What can you do on your own to improve your own literacy rate? Not a global one, but your own. Because while I do think it is important to focus on the global issues, because obviously few people watching this who are gonna make a change aren't probably going to, hugely impact the scale on your own accord. I think that this is something we have to tackle as a society, not on an individual level. I still think it's important to talk about that individual level. And there are no studies on do this and it will improve your literacy rate, because it's not something that improves overnight. It's not something that can be improved with reading one book. It's not something that can be improved with taking one class. And since, this concern around literacy is, at least in my understanding, fairly new-founded, we haven't done those studies and surveys yet. So none of this is scientific based. If you check these boxes, it will improve your literacy. This is just some of what could help to improve your literacy. But taking classes, trying to improve your understanding of the world around you, taking the time to read things, even though reading isn't literacy, reading more will help you develop that longer attention span, and also just subtly develop your skills on how to process and take in information. And if you are reading, I recommend you to read a variety of things, from financial articles to things on the media you're interested. Broaden your approach to understanding and learning and life. Take the time when you're learning something new to actually try and learn it and understand it. The next time you get a prescription or you're signing a contract, try to read through it. Try to check where you get lost. Where are you saying, oh, I'm dozing off? Where are you saying, hey, I don't understand these things? And then look into it more. Just really try and get curious about what is around you in the world. Look at maps. Look at things that aren't on your phone. Try to find the balance between this technology-based world that we live in and your mental well-being and health and your brain capabilities. Take walks. I'm sorry that there's no simple solution. I'm sorry I can't tell you to take a test and improve yourself. I'm sorry I can't say that watching this video is going to fix everything, because it's not. And it's probably going to be a while before we even start to see some improvements based on the current climate of our world. But if more people start to care, and if more people start to take small actions, maybe the next time there's a study done, it won't decrease again. But if you want some material to start your reading and you are interested in learning more about literacy, I'm going to be putting all of these studies and articles and everywhere that I got the information for this video down in the description. So if you want to expand on what you've learned here, and I know I did not talk about everything in these studies. I was really only talking about kind of the numbers and kind of what they mean. I really did not go into them too in-depthly. So if you want to do more research and broaden your understanding, those will be in the description for you to check out. If you have anything else to say on the topic, anything you know, anything that I didn't touch on, anything that I got wrong, please let me know below. Because while I did spend quite a while on this video, I know it is not going to be perfect. I'm not touching on everything. I'm trying to make this as concise as possible. But all in all, literacy can mean so many things. It can be impacted by so many things, and the studies we have are still slightly limited in our understanding. I'm sorry I can't end this video on a positive note, on a band-aid fix, on a actually everyone is wrong, this is all misinformation. But unfortunately, this is just not a positive subject. All that I hope is that when you see posts in the future about the literacy rates, you have a little bit more understanding into what they mean, and that whilst a lot of them are informative and a lot of them are just trying to raise concern, that you aren't falling into the fear-mongering of just scrolling and being like, oh my god, this thing is so concerning, and then you continue to scroll. But thank you so much for watching. I know I've thrown a lot at you, so thank you for sitting through it all. And if you want to learn more and see videos like this in the future, and also just videos on reading and writing in general, make sure to like and subscribe, because I will see you in the next one.